Critique of Capitalism. Marx criticized capitalism for its inherent contradictions and tendencies. Capitalism, the economic system that dominates the world today, has been the subject of critique since its inception. One of the most prominent and influential critics of capitalism was Karl Marx, who argued that capitalism was plagued by inherent contradictions and tendencies that would lead to its downfall. In this article, we will examine Marx's critique of capitalism, exploring his ideas on the labor theory of value, capitalist exploitation, capital accumulation and crisis, alienation, imperialism, and globalization. We will also consider the relevance of Marx's critique in contemporary times and its implications for politics and social movements. Introduction: Understanding Capitalism and Marx's Critique. Capitalism is an economic system characterized by private ownership of the means of production, with the goal of maximizing profits through the exploitation of labor. Karl Marx, a German philosopher, economist, and revolutionary, was highly critical of capitalism. In his writings, he analyzed the inherent contradictions and tendencies of the capitalist mode of production, exposing the ways in which it perpetuates exploitation, inequality, and crises. In this article, we will examine Marx's critique of capitalism, exploring his ideas on the labor theory of value, capitalist exploitation, and the inevitability of economic instability. The emergence of capitalism and its impact on society. Capitalism emerged in Europe during the 16th century, with the growth of trade and commerce. With the rise of large-scale industrial production in the 18th and 19th centuries, capitalism became the dominant economic system in the Western world. Marx argued that capitalism had a profound impact on society, transforming relationships between people and between classes. He identified social classes based on their relationship to the means of production, with the bourgeoisie, the owners of capital, and the proletariat, the working class, being the two central classes in capitalist society. The life and works of Marx. Karl Marx was born in Trier, Germany, in 1818. He studied law, history, and philosophy, eventually becoming a journalist and political activist. In collaboration with Friedrich Engels, he wrote several important works, including the Communist Manifesto and Das Kapital. Marx's ideas about the inherent contradictions of capitalism and the importance of revolutionary struggle for the overthrow of the bourgeoisie had a profound influence on socialist and communist movements around the world. The capitalist mode of production, contradictions and exploitation. The labor theory of value, foundation for Marx's critique of capitalism. Marx's critique of capitalism was based on the labor theory of value, which posits that the value of a commodity is determined by the amount of labor required to produce it. He argued that capitalists extracted surplus value from workers by paying them less than the value of their labor, thereby exploiting them. This exploitation was central to the capitalist mode of production, and forms the basis for Marx's critique of the system. Capitalist exploitation, the extraction of surplus value from labor. Marx believed that the exploitation of workers was inherent in capitalism, as capitalists sought to maximize profits by paying workers as little as possible. He argued that workers were alienated from the products of their labor, as well as from the process of production itself, due to the hierarchical structure of the workplace. This exploitation led to inequality and class conflict, and ultimately to the overthrow of the capitalist system. The labor theory of value, critique of capitalist profit. The fetishism of commodities and the illusion of fair exchange. Marx critiqued the fetishism of commodities, which refers to the idea that in capitalist society, products and services are valued not for their use value, but for their exchange value. He argued that this fetishism obscured the exploitation inherent in capitalist production, and created an illusion of fair exchange between buyers and sellers. Capitalist competition and the drive for profit maximization. Marx also criticized the competitive nature of capitalism, arguing that it led to a relentless drive for profit maximization. This drive, he believed, led to the exploitation of workers, as well as to environmental damage, social inequality, and economic crises. Capital accumulation and crisis, the inevitability of economic instability. The tendency of capital to concentrate and centralize. Marx identified the tendency of capital to concentrate and centralize, with large corporations and monopolies dominating the economy. This concentration of wealth and power, he argued, led to increased exploitation of workers, as well as to the creation of economic bubbles and crises. The dynamic of boom and bust, crisis as an inherent feature of capitalism. Marx believed that economic crises were an inherent feature of capitalism, caused by the contradictions and instabilities of the system. He argued that overproduction, underconsumption, and the overaccumulation of capital led to crises and recessions, which were often resolved through violent conflict between classes. Marx's critique of capitalism remains highly relevant today, as we continue to grapple with the social and economic consequences of the capitalist system. Alienation, separation of workers from products and themselves. Karl Marx's critique of capitalism delves deep into the inherent contradictions and tendencies of the system, starting with the concept of alienation. According to Marx, capitalism alienates workers in two fundamental ways: from the products they create and from their own selves. The loss of meaningful work and the estrangement of the worker. Under capitalism, workers become mere cogs in a machine, performing repetitive tasks without any control over the products they create. They lose the satisfaction and sense of ownership that comes from creating something meaningful. Furthermore, workers are alienated from their own labor power. They must sell their labor in order to survive, reducing themselves to mere commodities. Capitalism as a system of alienation. Marx viewed alienation as a systemic issue within capitalism, rather than a personal one. He argued that private ownership of the means of production allows capitalists to control every aspect of the production process and to extract profits from the labor of workers. This domination results in the alienation of workers and the concentration of wealth in the hands of the few. Imperialism and globalization, the expansion of capitalism. Marx's critique of capitalism also considers the system's tendency towards imperialism and globalization. The role of colonialism in the development of capitalism. According to Marx, colonialism was necessary for the development of capitalism. European powers conquered other countries, extracted resources and established markets to fuel their own industrialization. This created a global division of labor where certain countries became producers of raw materials and others became manufacturers of finished goods. Capitalism and globalization, the emergence of a world economy. In contemporary times, globalization has further enabled the expansion of capitalism. The development of transportation, communication, and technology has allowed for the creation of a global market, where capital flows freely across borders. This has led to the growth of transnational corporations and the exploitation of cheap labor in developing countries. Conclusion: the relevance of Marx's critique in contemporary times. Despite being over 150 years old, Marx's critique of capitalism continues to hold relevance in contemporary society. The continuing relevance of Marx's ideas. The increasing levels of inequality, the concentration of wealth among a few, and the exploitation of workers and natural resources are all issues that Marx highlighted in his critique of capitalism. These issues remain prevalent in contemporary society, and Marx's ideas provide a framework to understand and address them. Implications for contemporary politics and social movements. Marx's critique has influenced many contemporary political and social movements, including socialism, communism, and labor unions. His ideas continue to inspire a rethinking of the current capitalist system and a search for alternatives that prioritize equity and justice. Marx's Critique of Capitalism remains a powerful tool for understanding the workings of the global economy and the underlying contradictions of capitalism. From the exploitation of labor to the concentration of wealth and power, the problems Marx identified persist to this day. However, his critique also offers hope, pointing towards alternative economic systems and social arrangements that could create a fairer and more just world. By grappling with the issues raised by Marx, we can begin to imagine a different future, one that is not bound by the limitations of capitalism. In conclusion, the criticisms of capitalism by Karl Marx are still relevant today. Marx argued that capitalism was exploitative, unstable, and unsustainable in the long run. The contradictions between capitalists and workers, the class struggle, periodic crises, and environmental degradation are all problems that we continue to face in our capitalist system. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more informative videos.